Awakening. The process is deep. We're going to talk about the nature of having your soul, who loves you more than anything, tell you when others are hurting you in their own minds and expecting you to revisit it from a different perspective, perhaps. This is one of the many challenges I, as Brenda's soul, have deemed improbable for her to reunite with this soul on this plane that she is working through her issues with. How many are saying, I'm so tired of working through other people's issues? They're ours as well when we're talking about dynamics of family trees, right? Brenda was so tired of hearing from the family tree members that she created issues with outside of the vision of who they were on this plane. And it's because, in essence, many of those souls are saying, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about my own forgiveness cycle and what it felt like for me, versus those who said, I just assumed it was going to be okay. And it was, for the most part. I don't have to purposely deceive people into believing that everything is smooth clearing, right? I'm smooth clearing. These are people who are clearing out the collective. That's another vision that I looked at. I'm trying to create a space for those of us who understand it can take years to go through this process and to then decide I'm going to now help others in their process. Takes even longer for the majority of souls that do that work. Unless they're basically doing the vision of here's my soul, here's what my guidance is, and I'm just going to keep teaching it, versus I'm going to tap into the nature of who you are as a soul and bring you your own soul's wisdom. So that would mean that you need to rise very high in the vibration in order to do that kind of work. Now, what happens is that if we have fluctuations in our energy, which others would say, I am staying at a clear out vision. So this is where people in the spiritual enlightenment are thinking, am I really clearing out something for the collective? Or is it about just clearing it out of the tree of life, right? I use so many words and ideas, systems, to basically try to fight off this one soul that I love in my heart, but I'm not keen on in my mind. And it's only due to the nature of where they themselves got hurt, justifiably angry in many respects, but also very much unenlightened about the nature of the truth of the situations that people vibrated in. And this is what can happen on a soul level, is there is that idea of we need to come together and try to create a resolution to a soul solution, right? It's a soul solution is what people are offering. I want you just to say, clear it out of the collective, Brenda, for me. I don't want to deal with my family, my friends, my loved ones, right? We all work it out for the most part. There are some destroyers on the soul level who try to come through and destroy the visions if they are indeed of such negativity that they can't handle the vision themselves. So this is why Brenda is very ingrained in the vision of psychology. So she can say with her own mind, I know how to handle my own heart. And if I can handle my own heart, then others can benefit from that wisdom. And that's the majority of what I tend to do, versus let me reach in and grab your own soul's wisdom and bring it out for you to, enlighten yourself with. And that's the thing. It's not about saying that we all are here to do the process of enlightenment or the awakening. Spiritual awakening is something that many find themselves in that they didn't expect. And that's why we want people to understand this is not a joke for certain souls, okay? Because they've been thrown into prisons in their minds without knowing why they got put there. Okay? And that's the nature of letting people know it's okay. You're aligning with more of who you are from a certain plane. Now, that's very different than those who are vibrating in the idea of, I'm reaching out to my friends and family members on the other side of the veil saying, thank you for your wisdom. How many people say their wisdom isn't very good? It's not about who they are here. And so that's what everyone needs to keep reinforcing, is that their souls are very much not about the nature of who they are. And their souls also, not just who they are here, but we could say the oversouls. Other people will say overleaves. Other people will say soul of soul. My soul will say the soul of soul. That comes through and says it's a higher vision of who we are. Okay? And it doesn't mean it's a better than. It's just from a different place and time in which we vibrate. And so once that vision is cleared out enough, we can bring that vision to us, align with it, feel that vision, falling in love with who we are. I'm not here to destroy people, but I often did in my mind, right? How many people are going through that notion and they're in the enlightenment game, right? The game of life. That's one avenue of perception that I was working with. So often people's perception of who I am is very different. I'm not here to say that my process was easy, but what I am saying is we often learn from those who've traversed the realms of love and said it's not all it's cracked up to be. If you aren't able to hold that vibration in your family tree, you might want to think twice about going outside of it. Now, what we are often seeing is then those who are in it saying, but I operate in a different way of being or a different system of understanding than they do. So it's not saying their system is, quote, wrong, correct? It's the nature of letting go of those who need to tell people that they are wrong for being who they are. But in essence, that's not the case either. We have so many souls who are here letting people guide themselves to what is right for them and what is not right for them. But it doesn't mean it's not right for them in the future. It doesn't mean it's wrong for them in the future either, okay? Or that it's, just the timing of what system people are using. Others don't utilize any system and they just vibrate in the beauty of who they are, and they rise up naturally in the views of, I've always felt pretty good and kind in my way of being, so I don't have very many issues with many people. I actually respect the majority of the people on this plane when I'm in contact with them. I may have a little bit of a struggle when it comes to newsworthy items, but for the most part, I hear support from both sides of the aisle, so I don't have an issue with the political agendas for the most part. It may be that various issues are not my cup of tea to report on. Okay, and that's the difference, is my soul is more about the agendas of others, correct? It's not. It's about what's happening, why, and is there some understanding from a soul level we may be able to get other than, oh, it's just what it is. No, because a lot of people are neglecting the fact that there are often souls working on issues here that they themselves don't understand. Okay, so some people say, I came in to work out an issue with my mother, and so someone telling me to ditch my mother right from birth is not the way to go, right? No, it's the idea that those who are saying, oh, okay. You see, our souls will know what we are here to work on and what vibration we choose to work it out in. It's easier in essence if you can vibrate in the beauty of love for all, if possible, or the nature of unity consciousness, understanding that we're all combining and colliding in our minds, but that in essence we do unite in victory on the other side of the veil most often. We do have groups that are separate in their minds, thinking they're going to create from a separate plane of awareness. It's just a realm of discovery. It's nothing more than that. It has no separation attached to it. Those who think that they're going to bypass that vision of I don't need to be a part of this group or this group because my book tells me I'm going to a different place. You all unite with the vision of who you are, and then you choose to receive the wisdom of love. This is when people start to say, I love this vision, because it's true. It doesn't mean that it hurts any less when you have to hear the vibration of someone that you love in your mind as a former friend say the negativity to you that was repeated from a past life, right? Now, this isn't about past lives. It's about repeating the past over and over. So a lot of us are working out the issues that we thought we dealt with in our past, and then they come back to revisit us to see how can I work this in a better way for me. How many are thinking, oh no, I want to work it out with everybody? Isn't that the thing? And Brenda was like, I'm not receiving the golden rule back to me. And that's the nature. When people are on this plane, they're still creating from that vision of I'm the victim of somebody, right? We all have our own victimhood. And so we have to give ourselves the compassion. If we can't get out of it ourselves, let's just say others are projecting that we're still in it. But if there is a retelling of a story from a different perspective, perhaps, it could be that the illumination of events is what your soul is here to offer. Okay? This is why people are holding on to those hurts so much in our hearts. It's our minds, but we can feel it in our hearts. Okay? We're not going to demean our hearts or our emotions, because those are our guide sticks to soul. They let us know what's going on. Often, even if it's the thoughts, but it's our guidepost. It's telling us this hurts me and I'm not sure why, right? If you don't know why, or you do, that's a different story. Then you know how to work with it. But if you're like, I don't understand why this hurts me, but I know that it does. It doesn't feel good to me. And it could be that our own, well, others would say my immune system is weakened. That's where I was recently. I created a soul vision where my soul keeps me healthy for the most part. I get told wisdom about my health and others. But I was so stressed out by hearing certain things over and over and over again that I wasn't willing to deal with in a mature and responsible way, that then it became an issue for me. And I said, I'm so tired, I'm so tired, I'm so tired, I'm so tired. I need to rest, I need to rest. And I didn't grant myself that vision. And boom, what happened? I got sick, like everybody else, right? So it's not a perfection that we're looking for when we go through this process. But when we think about how deep is this process, and that's why people will say, I need to stop peeling back the layers of who I am, take a break, and enjoy my life. But if I'm here to do the work of wisdom, I need to allow myself to honor those who say I've got the best of the best on the line, right? Wednesday sessions are usually for others to grant their wisdom to. And I want to say I can hear your wisdom coming through about who you're honoring and why. We're not here to tell people that they are less than. What we can say is there are concepts and ideas that need to be rearranged in society. Some of them will fall by the wayside. Some of them will lift others up and tear others down. And this is how you know when you're in the vision of the high, because it's not going to tell people that they're less than. It's not going to give them identity labels that they need to rise into, right? Not even close. It's not about that. It's more like if you have someone telling you that you're a negative something, it's not coming from your soul. It's coming from the vibration of another soul's wisdom most often. And unless, of course, you're doing the idea of I'm retrieving my own soul from various planes of negativity that I vibrate in. That's the rough stuff that people have to go through sometimes. And it's not a pleasure trip when you go through that process. But that's why we just align with the highest vision of who we are. And that's when most people say, I'm going for my soul. It's really honestly the highest vision of our soul. We're not saying every aspect of who we are, right? Some people will say, well, we need to work out all those issues, and there's some aspect of who you are that's, out there in the ether somewhere waiting for you. You can reunite with all of your soul and still find pleasure. But the only issue is how much of the negativity you want to bring into your life to clear out for everybody, right? And Brenda brought through the most enlightened perspective ever. Who in their right mind would assume that soul retrieval is about the negativity only? Why would we assume that when we cross over, that we're going to have to deal with the idea of I was negative for a moment in space and time, and somehow that's going to count against me? And most of those moments of negativity are what? Guided by somebody else's measuring stick on how to be? It's a loving process for the most part, but there are those difficulties. I went through something that was incredibly painful, reunited on a soul level with the person who would have been labeled a perpetrator of a certain act, but who was also very much a friend and loved one in my mind. Okay? And that presence was kind and gentle and loving on the soul level. However, I was pissed off when I reunited with the waking aspect because it was a reunification from the dream state. Okay? And that was because I was actually more open to that than I would be in the awakened state. And I did hear from that soul and family members in the awakened state. And I know that there's no ill will between any of us. Okay, it took me a long time, and then I went through a process where I reopened the wound. This is why we often say, can we just heal our hearts and then move on? Okay, this is why people are very much in the idea of, keeping our spiritual journeys as free as we can of negativity and victimhood as much as possible. And trying to find the joy in the moment in which we're vibrating. And that's where people will start to drop off and say, I don't want to be of negativity. I want to hear the beauty of the process of awakening. It's beautiful when you hit those high notes. It's beautiful for us. But it's not about just staying up in the highest of the highs. We have our lows. We dip and dive into various realms of love. So some people will say this is why I align with certain groups, because we all feel better together. You'll start to understand the nature of where am I? Who am I working with? What tools am I using? Where is my heart really? Right? I miss my family. I don't miss their system of enlightenment that says there's something wrong with me. As a guide, right? As a soul that can bring through wisdom. Think about all those who channel, right? So that's the nature of where I am. And yet I get the reinforcement from a soul level from my family that they're all there in love and support of us as a group and of me in my pursuits. It's just not their cup of tea. And so that's why the patience comes through. I was impatient to do so much work for others that I kind of threw off the soul veil and went into the vision. I'm here to rediscover myself from various planes of love. And my soul was waiting for me, saying, I'm ready to do the work that you really want to do. You love who you are. You love joining with souls on the other side of the veil in various ways. Why are you not focusing on that kind of vision? And it's because it was in the desperation mode that I had within the family trees vision that I then created more situations for me to work through. And this is the nature of landing in a safe spot for who you are, right? There's no spot that's about safety for the most part, but this is why people are looking outside of themselves to say, am I going to be safe when I go through your process? Who told you that it was danger? You see, this is the old and the new. Okay, it doesn't mean it's free and clear from all pain. We can accept ourselves and love ourselves as much as possible and try to do that work as much as we can with others. Unless, of course, as we know now, unless there is an abusive intent or acts of violence being perpetrated on who we are. Now, how we deal with difficult people is where many of us rise and say, oh, I can just let them be them. They're not affecting me as much as they used to. But others are in situations where they don't have the chance or the ability to remove themselves from those situations due to the nature of the relationships in which they're vibrating. So this is why many will start to flee the families and go find other groups that make sense for them. Or they'll find others online who can say, yeah, we understand. We're not all here saying you're beautiful and kind and wise always, right? Because sometimes we have to deliver the messages that people don't necessarily agree with. And we have to understand when it comes to soul wisdom, those messages are not supposed to vibrate in the beauty of everybody all the time. You understand that very many times people are assuming that the highest of the high is just going to say you are all loved, adored, and cherished for who you are in every moment and every breath. That's the basic. That's the real deal. But is that what everyone wants to hear over and over and over? Or is it more about the nature of the wisdom of looking out into the world and saying, where are we struggling in our minds sometimes that we might be able to shift a little bit more? Am I joyful as a creative? I can tell you right now I'm not for the most part. I tend to vibrate in the seriousness of who I am. Why? Because I was stressed out. I was hearing so many souls who were, quote, trying to love me in the way that they love, which is this idea that Brenda had to bring forth that said when we've hurt somebody, whether it was intentionally or unintentionally, one of the things that we can say to ourselves or to others is, I'm sorry I didn't love you the way that you wanted to be loved. And it's the most heart-wrenching moment for many, because what it does is it allows for others to see themselves not only as the victims, but the victimizers, right? But it's a cherishing of those moments where we can then say, I've done my own hurt onto other people's hearts. Unless you're one of those beautiful souls that has never had a thought that hurt anybody before, right? We all have our own ideas about what it is we want, what we need, what we like, what we don't like. We're all vibrating in the beauty of change, right? Brenda was hearing about hope and change. But that's the nature of the wisdom of, Obama. Okay, now, and his vision is of inspiration for me in many ways, not in the way in which many people would understand, but in the nature of how I look at not only myself, but how I look at my son as a beautiful work of art who happens to have a personality type that is most difficult for certain people, mainly me, sometimes to deal with. But I can see the beauty of it through that vision. So I don't have to label him anything negative, right? That others would assume is a negative thing. It's just the differences in how we process our information and express. Sometimes it's very, very enlightening when people say, but it's not about soul. That's correct. So that's the nature of who I was, is every system that I ever used and explored with, I would tend to go very deep. But I also went broad with who am I working with? Are they labeling people negative things? Are they spreading fear? That's the biggie that people are working with. You're going to go deep into a process. Make sure that on the soul level, it's not trying to tell you that you're less than, or that you're in danger, or that there's something for you to fear about who you are or others on the soul level. Just because others have done that work, created from those soul level understandings, and then said, well, now I'm attracting it, Brenda, right? It's simple to get yourself out of, right? Not even close. Because we're working with our subconscious. I have dealt with fear. Fear is natural. So what do we do when we work with fear? And certain people are trying to ward it off left and right. But to be honest, if we can step into our fear, we can then feel it, own it, understand it. I've had to work with it on an energy level with souls. But it's not about labeling others as negative. It's not pleasant. So you vibrate out of the fear eventually. You let it process. I'm just fearful, but it's okay because I'm here in the now, processing out the fear of the unknown. That's where most people are when they go through the process of enlightenment. They start to say, I'm dealing with things I didn't even understand or know about. It gets labeled many things by many different organizations or institutions, right? It could be the, psychological community. It could be the, religious institutions. It could just be people in general who have different ideas about what they've seen on TV. And this is why we're here to dispel the myths of soul vision, right? More often than not, soul vision is about a creative process that we want people to create with the idea of how can we do it where it makes sense, where we're not trying to create processes that create problems, but where we create solutions, right? No, because if we're creating solutions for everybody, we're addressing issues. And that's actually a better place is to go, can we create from a place of joy? So that's where you would tend to focus on where can I find the joy or the happiness in my life? Or where can I find those who I create well with in my life? Are they saying that there's something wrong with me, first and foremost? Are they holding me against my will, right? Now, we have a lot of people who are dealing with a lot of serious issues in this world. That's for a different kind of session. Brenda's had to deal with some issues relating to terrorists and whatnot because of the nature of who she is and how she gets her information. She does not hold people responsible for the hostages at this point. And what that means is we all have a say and how these stories are being worked out on the soul level. This is someone else that wants to know what is her position on Israel and Palestine. It's a lose-lose situation, obviously, and we're learning much from it. It's a tragedy, correct? What else can you say other than the idea that there's plenty of blame to go around for more people? More people have so many ideas, and Brenda is like, it was the Clash of the Titans article that put many people off because they want people to be choosing sides or come from the place of us versus them. And if you do us versus them, you're going to start to get that vision handed to you on a soul level, and it is not pleasant. I'm taking sides all the time is where we go. It's about an opinion. It's an opinion. But for her, the neutrality that she is often taking is more about, I understand the idea that this is not just about us versus them. This is not a collective issue for the global community. Others will say it is. It's a global issue based on the idea that it is an active war state, but it is not one that everyone needs to have an opinion about, like many would say. There are people who try to force people to focus on issues of destruction without actually knowing what the solution is. And this is why Brenda says the souls of those souls are coming through saying she's wise not to watch all the destruction all day about what's going on in the Palestinian affairs and what's going on in the Israeli affairs, because they have their issues they're working on from a soul level that's playing out a narrative that's going to be working its way through the collective. We all get affected by it, but how much of it we let affect us is up to our own selves. My soul doesn't give me tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff about it because I know better. And this is why people are mad, because they say, what do you mean? You should be fighting angry and wanting to do this, right? The light worker? No. You don't want me in the fight or flight syndrome that many are working in. I know who I am, and I know how I work my magic. Do you think I would get the best information if I was angry at one side or the other? Or do you think that might be a little bit of a concern for those who were thinking about getting a soul session? Do you want someone who can give you the truth of the situation from both sides, so to speak, or from the perspectives, and give you the paths forward that might be a more pleasant experience for us? This is where I'm aiming. Okay, so just because I'm not in joy, like, giggling and happy, doesn't mean that I'm not grateful and appreciative for all the wisdom that I get that's brought through, right? I happen to be working through some issues in my life. That's the nature of it. I had the time of my life in many ways. I know I'm creating joy in the future. I know what's coming to me. It doesn't mean it's always beautiful either. Okay? I got told when I needed to start saving some pennies. I knew where I was headed. Okay? And it was one of those, that's where honesty, people go, whoa. This is where your soul can really come in and help you and say, well, we now know what you need to work on. Sometimes it's about letting go of the past. Now, if someone else here on this plane is not letting you let go of the past, you need to have a sit down with them and say, this is your issue to work through. I'm not there yet. Right? Some people will just disconnect. But in essence, if you're at peace with yourself and with the other person, you're good. You don't have to vibrate in their victimhood. You don't have to take on their doubts about that vision. Because others will say, well, they're forcing me. Then you know right away that they're in a different vibration than you are. You don't have to lower yourself to their vision. And you say, I think you understand, you like drawing people in for the drama. I have a friend who loves to create drama in the idea of the issues that I'm creating are often beautiful for what they are, but are of negativity for who I am. And it drives me crazy sometimes when I hear it. And then I take the bait. How many people are taking the bait with those that are trying to draw them into drama? Unnecessary drama is what Brenda calls it. Now, our souls will call it something else. But in essence, Brenda says, oh, it feels like drama. Versus this idea that does someone else need to, quote, be better than me? Right? We deal with this a lot on the soul level. This idea of competition or whatnot. Now, that is a psychological tool that I often use. I haven't used it in a while, but it's serving its purpose for me now because in essence, I look at myself sometimes and say, am I creating drama for myself? Am I being aggressive towards myself? Right? Am I putting myself in as a victim? And then am I perpetrating that on myself, creating myself as a victim, but being the creator of that, which is then more about the victimizing. So am I victimizing myself in a certain way with my thoughts, creating the victim, and then trying to rescue myself? This is very common. So this is the idea. In essence, you could take any topic of, quote, self-improvement or something and ask yourself, am I creating this dynamic with myself where I'm creating a problem for myself in my mind, creating myself as a victim, reinforcing it often, either with others or just by myself, and then still looking for the answer to rescue myself from it? This is where a lot of people are in that dynamic. Now, we can be in that dynamic with others, and we want to utilize a higher vibration for that tool, and we can at some point turning it away from the drama triangle to an empowerment triangle. But even in that idea of it, it has its own limitations because we're not just 3 stages of soul. We come in and out of vibrations very frequently. We love ourselves through the process of enlightenment is what we want most people to say. I love who I am. Brenda loves who she is. She says, I already know it. I don't even need to state it to anybody. It's been embodied my whole life. I have issues with certain things potentially that I've created, right? But I never doubt the love that I have for myself. Not from an ego, kind of vision where I'm trying to convince myself that I love me. Right? I adore my life. I always knew my life is going to be worth it. My self-worth has had some hits, but for the most part, I know how to work that one out, and I can see it in like nobody's business when others are working with this idea of my worth is being challenged. Don't take anything that's said in general as a specific directive for yourself. Okay, that's something that most people need to understand is a lot of the wisdom that is out there has its own characteristics of soul that may or may not be the best for you. Okay, so that's like even for me, I was told I need to hold lightly to any system of, development. And that would include things like the psychology of drama triangle, There's one system I hold on to very tightly, and that's something that others will know about at some point, but I'm developing, through the idea of my soul, the process. But it's still something that in those processes, I'm able to give people their own soul wisdom. And that's why it takes me longer to develop, because I'm coming through with people who have certain ideas of how to be that is right for me, that they think is better based on their own conditioning of what they went through. So just because someone didn't have the most pleasant experience doesn't mean they don't have the wisdom from that experience. And so for someone like me, I realized in my process, I was having joyful, exuberant visions in a lot of ways. And then I got fearful, and then I started to create from the place of fear. And then I went looking for someone else to help me based on that idea. And then it turned into this whole spiral of negativity. But I was still hearing the messages of love as well. And that's how I knew I have to get out of the older paradigm of that I have to protect myself, or that there's something to be fearful of. So for those of you that are creating with that, I understand. I have compassion for all of us that go through that process from those visions of who we are that don't feel so good. That's why we love ourselves through that process. Okay? So, what is it about the deepness of awakening? It's basically saying, we want you to dig deep into your hearts most often. Align yourself with people who love you for who you are if you can. I'm grateful that I have found not only my family and my friends, but very many souls who understand why this isn't going to be jam-packed with information for them necessarily, but kudos to those of you who honor that vision of I was there in my mind thinking I could hurt somebody when they are tapped into the nature of who I am. I had that experience because someone knew what I was capable of in the nature of my soul, receives wisdom from the souls that I'm interacting with as well. So this is why we would say your intentions of love are always adored. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. If you're having issues related to the process of awakening that you want to reach out and, let me know, and I'll see if I can bring through something for you. It's not about telling it to the general public, always. And so that's why I want to honor those souls, because sometimes those messages that want to come through are not for the nature of the general public. Okay, or it could be that it's a personal vision that needs to come through, and so it doesn't need to come through in the public arena. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, or follow if you want to get more of these videos, depending on the platform that you're watching. And as my soul guided me, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a wonderful day.